The night before the accident, Arthur Caldwell stood at the glass wall of his penthouse and watched the city glow like a field of stars beneath him. At 70, he was still tall, still sharp, still powerful. The kind of man who could make a phone call and move markets. The founder of Caldwell Global Industries. Oil, tech shipping, real estate. His name carried weight in every boardroom from New York to Singapore. But none of it mattered to him as much as the voices echoing behind him. "Dad, you promised we'd do this next year," laughed his youngest, Ethan, 20, tall and restless. "Your father always promises next year," said Melissa, 23, rolling her eyes. "He'll just buy another island and say it's for family bonding," added Victor, 25, smirking as he sipped expensive whiskey. Arthur turned, smiling. His wife, Claire, stood beside the fireplace. Elegant, calm, beautiful in a quiet, distant way. She had been his partner for 30 years. "You all think money solves everything," Arthur said gently. "But the truth is, one day you'll realize time is more expensive than anything I own." Victor chuckled. "That's easy to say when you own half the world." Arthur didn't reply. He simply looked at them, memorizing their faces. He didn't know why, but something in his chest felt heavy that night, as if a storm was coming. The next morning, the storm arrived. Arthur's car never made it past the highway curve outside the city. A speeding truck lost control in the rain and slammed into the side of his black sedan. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The world spun into darkness. When Arthur woke, everything was white. White walls, white ceiling, white sheets, the sharp scent of disinfectant. He tried to move. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. His heart began to race. Panic crawled into his throat. "Easy, Mr. Caldwell," a soft voice said. He turned his head. A young nurse stood beside him. She couldn't have been more than 30. Dark hair tied back. Gentle eyes. Calm voice. "I'm Lena," she said. "You've been in surgery for 14 hours. You're safe now." Arthur swallowed. "My legs." Silence. Her eyes softened. The doctors did everything they could. The spinal damage was severe. "You're paralyzed from the waist down." The words fell like stones. Arthur closed his eyes. A man who controlled empires now couldn't even move his own body. The first week, his family came every day. Claire sat beside his bed, holding his hand. The children took turns talking about business, parties, friends, investments. The hospital room filled with noise and perfume and expensive cologne. But by the second week, the visits grew shorter. By the third, they came only every other day. By the fourth, only once. Victor stood at the foot of the bed. "You'll be transferred to a private home facility," he said. "Best equipment, best nurses, everything paid for." Arthur frowned. "And you?" "We're busy," Melissa said quickly. "There's a lot to handle." Claire didn't meet his eyes. Arthur felt something cold settle in his chest. "Of course," he whispered. The private home was beautiful. Marble floors, wide windows, a garden outside, state-of-the-art equipment. But it felt empty, silent. The only voice he heard regularly was Lena's. She had been assigned as his primary nurse. Every day she helped him sit up, cleaned him, fed him, adjusted his medications, read to him when he couldn't sleep. At first he hated it, hated needing her, hated the helplessness. But she never treated him like a burden. She spoke to him like he was still a man, still human. "Did you really build your first company in a garage?" she asked one afternoon. Arthur smirked. "Not a garage, a warehouse, and it smelled like engine oil and regret." She laughed, a warm, genuine laugh. It had been months since he'd heard that sound in his home. Weeks passed. The children stopped calling. Claire visited once, standing near the doorway like a stranger in a hotel room. "I'm traveling," she said, "for my health. The stress is too much." Arthur nodded. "Of course." She kissed his forehead, then left. He never saw her again. Only Lena remained. She brought small things into his life. Music, sunlight, conversation, hope. One evening, as she adjusted his blanket, Arthur asked, "Why do you do this?" She looked at him, confused. "Do what?" "Care. So much. Most nurses, they do their job. But you stay longer. You talk. You listen." She hesitated. "My father was paralyzed after a construction accident," she said quietly. "My mother left. Couldn't handle it. He died alone in a hospital." Arthur felt a knot in his chest. I promised myself I'd never let anyone feel that way if I could help it. For the first time since the accident, Arthur's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he whispered. Months turned into a year. Arthur's world became smaller, but warmer. He and Lena talked for hours. About life, about regret, about dreams they never chased, about the strange loneliness that hides behind wealth and success. One night, during a thunderstorm, the power flickered. The room went dim. Lena sat beside his bed, holding a flashlight. "You're not afraid of the dark, are you?" she teased. Arthur smiled. "I'm afraid of being alone in it." She looked at him, really looked at him, and something changed. Their love didn't come suddenly. It grew quietly, in shared smiles, in long conversations, in the way she brushed his hair gently, in the way he waited for her voice each morning. One evening, as the sun painted the room gold, Arthur took her hand. "Stay," he said, "not as my nurse, as something more." Her eyes widened. "Arthur," people would talk. "Your family." "My family left," he said softly. "You stayed." Tears filled her eyes, and slowly she nodded. 3 months later, Arthur called his lawyer. "I want to change my will," he said. The lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, adjusted his glasses. "May I ask the reason?" Arthur looked at Lena, who stood quietly by the window. "She's the only one who didn't abandon me," he said. "She deserves everything." Hargrove hesitated. "Your children—" "My children chose their path," Arthur said firmly. "Now I choose mine." The new will was signed that afternoon, but Hargrove left the house with a troubled look, because loyalty was not his strongest trait. 2 days later, Victor's phone rang. When he heard the news, his face went pale. "He did what?" he shouted. Melissa grabbed the phone. "That nurse? That nobody? She gets everything." Ethan paced the room. "We can't let this happen." Victor's eyes darkened. "We won't." In a dark bar on the edge of the city, Victor met 2 men, former soldiers. Hardened, quiet, dangerous. "How much?" one of them asked. Victor slid an envelope across the table. "Half now, half after." "What's the job?" Victor's voice was cold. "Make the nurse disappear." The night it happened, Lena was leaving the house after her shift. She walked down the quiet street, the air cool and still. A van pulled up beside her. The door slid open. 2 men stepped out. Before she could scream, a hand covered her mouth, and the street went silent again. Arthur waited that night, and the next morning, and the next, but Lena never came. A new nurse arrived instead. Arthur's voice trembled. "Where is she?" The nurse avoided his eyes. "I don't know, sir." But later that day, the police arrived, and Arthur learned the truth. Lena's body had been found in a deserted warehouse, beaten, strangled, left like trash. Arthur's world shattered. He screamed. He cried. He begged the universe to wake him from the nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real, and the pain in his chest grew stronger, 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 until his heart simply stopped. Victor, Melissa, and Ethan sat in the lawyer's office days later. "So," Victor said, smiling, "now that she's gone, the estate goes to us." Hargrove swallowed. "There's the clause." Victor's smile faded. "What clause?" "If anything happens to Miss Lena under suspicious circumstances, all assets are transferred to the Caldwell Hope Foundation, a global charity." Silence filled the room. Melissa's voice shook. "How much is the foundation getting?" Hargrove adjusted his glasses. "Everything." Victor slammed his fist on the table. "That's impossible." But it wasn't, because Arthur had thought of everything. The police investigation moved quickly. The soldiers were arrested, and under pressure, they confessed. They named Victor, Melissa, Ethan. The courtroom was packed the day of the verdict. The judge's voice echoed through the silent hall. Guilty on all counts. Victor's face turned pale. Melissa collapsed in tears. Ethan stared at the floor. Life sentences. No inheritance. No freedom. No redemption. Months later, a children's hospital opened in Lena's name. Then a school. Then a shelter. Then another. And another. Arthur's billions began to change lives across the world. Children who once slept on streets now slept in safe beds. Families who had nothing now had hope. And every building carried the same name, the Lena Caldwell Foundation. In a quiet corner of the foundation's headquarters, a portrait hung on the wall, Arthur in his wheelchair, Lena standing beside him, both smiling. A love story no one had expected, a legacy no one could steal. But one night, a young reporter reviewing old case files noticed something strange. The accident report from the day Arthur was paralyzed. The truck driver had vanished after posting bail. No trial, no conviction, no record of where he went. Just gone. And the payment that covered his bail? It came from an offshore account. An account that, years earlier, had connections to Victor Caldwell. The reporter leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. Was the accident really an accident? Or had the children planned everything from the very beginning? If you were Arthur, would you have trusted your family again? And do you think the accident was truly an accident or something darker? Tell me what you think in the comments.